The first thing I noticed when I woke up wasn't the throbbing pain in my abdomen where they'd removed my appendix 3 days ago. It wasn't the howling wind outside the remote Wisconsin cabin, or the fact that my wife Clara was standing over me with a smile that could freeze hell itself. No, the first thing I noticed was that she wasn't alone. "Good morning, sweetheart," Clara said, her voice dripping with mock concern. "How are you feeling?" I blinked, still groggy from the painkillers, trying to focus on the tall, dark-haired man standing beside her. He looked familiar, but my brain felt like it was swimming through molasses. "Who's your friend?" I managed to croak. Clara's smile widened. "David, meet Matthias, my boyfriend." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I tried to sit up, but the surgical pain shot through me like lightning. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Oh, come on, David. Don't play dumb. You had to know this was coming." Clara pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down, crossing her legs like she was settling in for a pleasant chat. "I mean, really, did you think I was going to spend the rest of my life with someone like you?" Matthias stepped forward, and I got a better look at him. Mid-30s, expensive clothes, the kind of cocky swagger that screamed money and trouble. "Sorry, man," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "Nothing personal." Everything's personal," I replied, my voice getting stronger as the shock wore off and anger took its place. "Clara, what the hell is this about?" "This is about me finally being honest," she said, standing up and walking to the window. The cabin was surrounded by nothing but snow-covered pine trees for miles. We were completely isolated, just like she'd insisted when she'd driven me up here to recover from surgery. "I've been seeing Matthias for 8 months now. We're in love, David. Real love, not whatever this pathetic arrangement has been. 8 months. The number echoed in my head. 8 months of lies, of her coming home late from work meetings, of her suddenly being too tired for conversation, too busy for anything that resembled a marriage. "So why bring me here?" I asked. "Why not just tell me at home?" Clara turned from the window, and for the first time in years, I saw the real her. Cold, calculating, completely without remorse. "Because I needed you somewhere isolated while Matthias and I handled the practical matters." "What practical matters?" Matthias pulled out a folder from his jacket and tossed it on the bed beside me. "Your wife's been busy, Dave. Can I call you Dave? She's been transferring money out of your joint accounts for months, liquidating investments, selling things." I opened the folder with trembling hands. Bank statements, property transfers, investment withdrawals, hundreds of thousands of dollars, gone. My hands shook as I flipped through page after page of financial devastation. "You can't do this," I whispered. "This is theft." "Actually, it's not," Clara said, pulling out her phone and showing me the screen. "See, everything was done legally. Joint accounts, remember? And I've been forging your signature for years. You never paid attention to the finances anyway." She was right, and I hated her for it. I'd been so focused on my job at the advertising agency, so trusting, so stupid. "There's more," Matthias said, clearly enjoying this. "Clara's already filed divorce papers, irreconcilable differences. She's claiming you've been emotionally abusive, that she feared for her safety. That's insane. I never—" "Who's going to believe you?" Clara interrupted. "A man who can't even manage his own money? Who was so oblivious he didn't notice his wife having an affair for 8 months? I stared at them both, feeling like I was in some kind of nightmare. "So what now? You just leave me here to die?" "Don't be so dramatic," Clara said, walking to the fireplace where a small fire was crackling. "There's enough food for 2 weeks, plenty of firewood. The snowplow will clear the road eventually. You'll be fine." "My phone won't be necessary," she said. And before I could react, she grabbed my iPhone from the nightstand and tossed it into the fire. The screen cracked and went black as the flames consumed it. "You're insane," I said. "I'm practical," Clara replied. "Matthias and I are flying to the Maldives tonight. By the time you make it back to civilization, we'll be long gone. The apartment's been sold, by the way. I had the locks changed weeks ago." Matthias checked his expensive watch. "We should go. Flight's in 6 hours." Clara leaned down and kissed my forehead, a mockery of affection. "Goodbye, David. Try not to take this too personally. Some people are just born winners, and others—" She shrugged. "Well, others are you." They gathered their things and headed for the door. I heard their car start outside, heard the tires crunching through the snow as they drove away, leaving me alone in the middle of nowhere, with nothing but my rage and a plan they never saw coming. Because here's the thing about underestimating someone for 15 years. You forget they might be paying attention. You forget they might be smarter than you think. And you definitely forget that the quiet, trusting husband might have a few tricks up his sleeve. I waited until I was sure they were gone, then reached under the mattress and pulled out the satellite phone I'd hidden there 3 weeks ago. The same day I'd installed the hidden cameras throughout the cabin. The same day I'd started working with my assistant Jules to prepare for exactly this scenario. "Jules," I said when she answered on the first ring. "David, thank God. Did they do it? Did they actually go through with it? Every word. Did you get it all? Crystal clear. The cameras worked perfectly. We've got everything recorded." Huh, I smiled for the first time in months. "Then let's begin." Huh, the blizzard outside was getting worse, but I'd been watching the weather reports for weeks. I knew it would clear by morning, and I knew the back road that led to Highway 51 would be passable if you knew where to look. Clara had always been too city soft to pay attention to things like that. I dragged myself out of bed, ignoring the surgical pain that felt like someone was twisting a knife in my gut. The cabin had everything I needed: rope, wooden planks from the back porch, even an old pair of skis in the storage room. It took me 2 hours to build a makeshift sled, but I'd had plenty of time to plan this out. By dawn, the snow had stopped, and I was ready to move. I'd packed the most important things: the hard drives from the hidden cameras, my backup documents, and the GPS tracker I'd sewn into Clara's favorite purse months ago. She'd never noticed it, of course. Clara never noticed anything that didn't directly benefit her. The journey to the main road was brutal. Every bump sent fire through my abdomen, and twice I nearly passed out from the pain. But I kept going, fueled by the image of Clara and Matthias sitting on some tropical beach, laughing about how they'd destroyed me. They had no idea what was coming. A snowplow found me around noon. The driver, a chatty guy named Rick, who seemed thrilled to have company. "Jesus, what happened to you?" he asked, helping me into the warm cab of his truck. "My wife left me stranded at our cabin," I said, which was technically true. "That's cold, man, real cold. Where you need to go?" "The hospital in Rhinelander, and I need to make a phone call." Rick handed me his cell phone without question. Small-town Wisconsin folks were like that. Trusting, helpful, everything Clara and Matthias weren't. "Jules, it's me. David, where are you?" "I've been worried sick." "I'm fine. What's our status?" "Everything's in motion. I've been monitoring Clara's credit cards and bank accounts like you asked. They checked into the airport hotel last night, spent a fortune on room service. Flight's at 8 tonight. Perfect. Have you contacted airport security?" "Already done. I sent them the information about Matthias Rodriguez's outstanding warrants. Turns out your wife's boyfriend has quite the criminal history." I felt a surge of satisfaction. I'd hired a private investigator months ago, the moment I'd started suspecting Clara was cheating. The PI had uncovered Matthias's real identity: a con man with arrests in 3 states for fraud and identity theft. "What about the financial stuff?" "All frozen. I've got power of attorney papers you signed last year, remember? For when you had that minor surgery?" "Well, I've been busy. Every joint account is locked pending investigation of suspicious activity. Clara's credit cards are maxed out and canceled. The apartment sale is being contested by your lawyer." Rick glanced over at me with raised eyebrows. I gave him a thumbs up. "Jules, you're an angel." "I'm just getting started. Wait until you see what I've got planned for the airport." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a wheelchair at Rhinelander Hospital, my laptop open, watching airport security footage that Jules had somehow managed to access. Don't ask me how she did it. Jules had skills that bordered on the supernatural when it came to technology. On the screen, I could see Clara and Matthias in the departure lounge, looking increasingly agitated. Clara kept trying to use her credit card at various shops, only to have it declined. Matthias was on his phone, probably trying to figure out why his fake ID wasn't working for international travel. "This is better than cable," I muttered, taking a sip of terrible hospital coffee. My phone rang. Jules again. "David, you need to see this. I'm sending you a video link." The video showed Clara at the airline check-in counter, her face red with embarrassment as the clerk explained that her card had been declined. Matthias was arguing with a security officer who was examining his passport with obvious suspicion. "How did you—" "I may have tipped off airport security about a suspicious passenger traveling under false documentation. And I may have mentioned that his companion was involved in a domestic financial fraud case." I laughed so hard my surgical wound ached. "Jules, remind me to give you a raise. I'll hold you to that. But David, there's something else. I've been digging into Clara's background, and I found something interesting. Remember her best friend Sophie? The one who's always been so supportive of Clara's girls' nights out? Yeah, what about her? She's been involved in this from the beginning. I found text messages, emails, financial transfers. Sophie's been helping Clara hide money and plan this whole thing. She was supposed to get a cut of the proceeds. The pieces clicked into place. Sophie had always been around during Clara's suspicious absences. She'd been the one encouraging Clara to follow her heart and do what makes her happy. I'd thought she was just being a supportive friend. I'd been wrong about a lot of things. Jules, I want you to prepare a special surprise for Sophie, and I want you to book me a flight to Milwaukee tonight. David, you just had surgery. You shouldn't be traveling. I'll be fine. Besides, I wouldn't miss this for the world. As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, pure, undiluted joy. Clara and Matthias thought they'd left me helpless and broken in that cabin. They thought they'd won. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Milwaukee's Mitchell International Airport, at 9 p.m., was exactly as chaotic as I'd hoped it would be. Holiday travelers, delayed flights, stressed passengers everywhere. The perfect setting for what I had planned. I spotted them immediately. Clara was sitting in the departure lounge, her designer luggage scattered around her, looking like she'd been crying. Matthias was nowhere to be seen, which probably meant airport security had already detained him. Jules met me at the airport entrance, pushing a wheelchair and grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. Please tell me you got everything on video, I said as she helped me into the chair. Every beautiful second. Clara's been here for 3 hours, trying to figure out why her cards don't work and why Matthias got arrested. She's called you about 50 times, but obviously my phone is a pile of ash in a fireplace. What about Sophie? Phase 2 is ready to launch. I've got everything set up on social media, email, and I may have sent some interesting information to her employer. We made our way through the airport, and I have to admit, there was something deeply satisfying about approaching Clara while she was at her most vulnerable. She looked up as we got closer, her eyes widening in shock. David, what are you doing here? Hello, Clara. Enjoying your vacation? She stood up quickly, looking around nervously. David, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear how you explain stealing $300,000 from our joint accounts, or how you explain your boyfriend's arrest for identity fraud, or how you explain this. I pulled out my tablet and showed her the video footage from the cabin. Her face went white as she watched herself confess to months of theft and adultery. You recorded us. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. The cabin is my property, and Wisconsin is a one-party consent state for recordings. But thanks for asking. A small crowd was starting to gather, drawn by Clara's increasingly hysterical voice. Perfect. David, please, we can work this out. I made a mistake. A mistake? Clara, you called me pathetic. You said I was a loser. You stole my money and left me to die in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. I never said you would die. There was food, firewood, after major surgery, alone, in a blizzard. The crowd was getting bigger now, and I could see people pulling out their phones to record. Clara noticed too, her eyes darting around frantically. Please, can we talk privately? Why? Afraid people might hear the truth about what you really are? That's when I saw him, Matthias, being escorted through the airport in handcuffs by 2 security officers. He spotted Clara and started shouting. Clara, you have to help me. They're saying I'm wanted in 3 states. Because you are, I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Identity theft, fraud, con games. Real winner you picked there, sweetheart. Clara turned back to me, tears streaming down her face. David, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll give the money back. You can't give it back. You already spent most of it. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, shopping sprees with your boyfriend. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? How did you know? How did you know about any of this? I smiled, the same cold smile she'd given me in the cabin. Because unlike you, Clara, I'm not stupid. I've been watching you for months. I know about the fake work meetings, the secret credit cards, the apartment you rented for your little love nest. I know about Sophie helping you plan this whole thing. Sophie? What does Sophie have to do with everything? Jules stepped forward, holding up her phone. Should I show her, David? Please do. Jules turned the phone screen toward Clara, showing a series of text messages between Clara and Sophie, discussing the best way to clean out the loser and make sure he can't fight back. Clara staggered backward, bumping into her luggage. How did you get those? Sophie gave them to us, I lied smoothly. About an hour ago. Right after we showed her the evidence of her involvement in financial fraud. She was very cooperative once she realized she was looking at potential jail time. It wasn't true, of course. Jules had hacked Clara's phone remotely weeks ago. But Clara didn't need to know that. Sophie wouldn't betray me. Wouldn't she? Check your phone, Clara. See if Sophie's been answering your calls tonight. Clara grabbed her phone with shaking hands, frantically dialing. I could hear it go straight to voicemail. The number you have dialed is no longer in service, the automated message announced. Sophie changed her number this afternoon, Jules said helpfully. Right after her boss fired her for embezzling company funds. Funny how these things work out. Clara collapsed into her chair, the fight going out of her completely. What do you want, David? I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything, I said, leaning forward in my wheelchair. I want you to know what it's like to be betrayed by the person you trusted most. I want you to experience the same humiliation you tried to put me through. I get it, okay? I get it. You win. Do I? Because from where I'm sitting, nobody wins. You destroyed our marriage, stole our money, and humiliated me in front of strangers. But you also destroyed yourself in the process. Airport security approached us then, led by a stern-looking woman in a supervisor's uniform. Excuse me, sir, ma'am. We're going to need to ask you some questions about your travel companion. Clara looked up hopefully. Yes, officer, I can explain. Ma'am, we have evidence that you were aware of Mr. Rodriguez's false identity and criminal background. We're going to need you to come with us. As they led Clara away, she turned back to me one last time. David, please, don't let them arrest me. I'm begging you. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd loved for 15 years, this person who'd shared my bed and my dreams and my bank account. Then I shrugged. You should have thought of that before you threw my phone in the fire. The next morning, I was back in Milwaukee, sitting in the conference room at Henderson & Associates, the advertising agency where Clara and I had both worked for the past decade. My boss, Janet Henderson, was reading through a thick folder of documents, while Clara's supervisor, Mark Thompson, watched a video on his laptop. This is extensive, Janet said finally. I've been documenting everything for months, I replied. Clara's been using company resources for personal business, falsifying expense reports, and using her position to facilitate financial fraud. Mark looked up from the laptop. This video from the cabin, she actually admits to stealing money from joint accounts? $300,000, and that's just what I've found so far. Janet closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. David, I have to ask, why didn't you come to us sooner? Because I hoped I was wrong. I hoped my wife wasn't the person these documents suggested she was. I paused, letting the weight of that sink in. I was wrong. What do you want from us? I want Clara fired. I want her banned from the industry. And I want everyone to know exactly what kind of person she really is. Consider it done, Mark said. We can't have someone like this representing our agency. The liability alone— There's more, I said, pulling out another folder. Clara's been working with her friend Sophie Martinez to embezzle funds from Sophie's company as well. They've been running a sophisticated operation for months. Janet's eyes widened. Sophie, from Creative Solutions? She's one of our biggest clients. Not anymore. Sophie was fired yesterday when her company discovered the embezzlement. But here's the interesting part. Clara was supposed to get a percentage of whatever Sophie stole. They were planning to use that money to finance their new life in the Maldives. With this Matalas character, who's currently in federal custody on multiple fraud charges, Clara picked a real winner. Mark shook his head. I can't believe we never saw this coming. Clara's very good at deception. She's had years of practice. After the meeting, I drove to Sophie's apartment complex on the east side of town. I wanted to see her face when she realized her carefully constructed world was falling apart. Sophie lived in a luxury high-rise that she definitely couldn't afford on her legitimate salary. I took the elevator to the 15th floor and knocked on her door. David? She opened the door a crack, the security chains still attached. What are you doing here? I think you know why I'm here, Sophie. I don't know what you're talking about. Clara's in jail, Sophie. Matthias is in federal custody. And I have documentation of every transfer you made, every fake expense report you filed, every lie you told to cover for Clara's affair. Sophie's face went pale. You can't prove anything, can't I? I held up my phone, showing her a video of Clara explicitly discussing Sophie's role in the embezzlement scheme. Clara was very talkative yesterday, especially when she realized you'd changed your phone number and disappeared. That bitch, Sophie whispered. She said the same thing about you. Funny how that works. Sophie closed the door, and I heard her fumbling with the security chain. When she opened it again, I could see she'd been crying. What do you want? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You helped Clara destroy my marriage and steal my money. You thought you were clever, thought you'd never get caught. We never meant for it to go this far. Yes, you did. You planned every detail, the fake business trips, the secret apartment, the money transfers. You even helped Clara practice what she was going to say when she left me in that cabin. Sophie staggered backward into her apartment. How could you possibly know that? Because I've been recording Clara's phone calls for weeks, including the ones where she practiced her little speech with you. Some people are born winners, and others are you. That was your line, wasn't it, Sophie? She collapsed onto her expensive couch, sobbing. My life is ruined. I lost my job, my reputation, everything. Good, I said simply. You earned it. I left Sophie's apartment and drove to the police station, where Clara was being held pending her arraignment. I had no intention of visiting her, but I wanted to see the building where she was spending her first night in custody. My phone rang as I sat in the parking lot. David? It's Jules. You need to see this. What now? Check your email. I sent you something special. I opened my email and found a link to a local news website. The headline made me smile. OLCL women arrested in elaborate fraud scheme. The article included Clara's mugshot, details about the embezzlement, and quotes from sources close to the investigation about the sophisticated nature of the fraud. It also mentioned Matthias's arrest and Sophie's firing. How did you get them to run this story? I may have sent the news station some very interesting video footage. The cabin confession was particularly compelling. Jules, you're terrifying. I prefer thorough. But David, there's something else. Clara's lawyer called. She wants to make a deal. What kind of deal? Full confession, restitution of stolen funds, and a public apology in exchange for a reduced sentence. I thought about it for a moment. Clara, desperate and broken, willing to humiliate herself publicly just to avoid more jail time. Tell her lawyer I'll consider it. But I have conditions. What conditions? I want the apology broadcast on local television. I want her to admit to everything, the affair, the theft, the abandonment. I want everyone who knows us to see exactly what kind of person she really is. David, that's brutal. She threw my phone in a fire and left me to die, Jules. Brutal doesn't begin to cover what she deserves. As I drove home to my hotel room, I was staying at a nice place downtown, paid for with money from an account Clara hadn't known about. I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Clara and her conspirators had thought they were so smart, so sophisticated. They'd thought I was just a naive husband who would never fight back. They'd been wrong about everything. 3 days later, I was back at the cabin. Not because I had to be, but because I wanted to be. This was where Clara had revealed her true self, where she'd shown me exactly how much contempt she had for our marriage and our life together. It seemed fitting that this should be where her story ended. Jules had arranged everything perfectly. Clara's lawyer had negotiated a plea deal that included restitution and a public apology. But Clara had insisted on delivering the apology in person, at the cabin, where it all started. She thought it would be more meaningful, more personal. She had no idea what I had planned. I arrived at the cabin around noon, giving myself time to set up the cameras and prepare the final act of this drama. Jules had driven up separately and was hiding in the woods with professional recording equipment. We were going to document every second of Clara's humiliation. Clara arrived at 2 p.m., driving a beat-up rental car that was a far cry from the BMW she'd been driving when she left me here to die. She looked terrible, pale, thin, her expensive clothes replaced by a cheap department store outfit. Jail had not been kind to her. She knocked on the cabin door tentatively, like she was afraid of what she might find inside. Come in, Clara, it's open. She entered slowly, looking around the cabin as if seeing it for the first time. David, where are you? I'm right here. I was sitting in the same chair where she'd delivered her cruel speech, wearing the same clothes I'd been wearing that day. Please, have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. Clara sat down on the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl called to the principal's office. David, I want you to know how sorry I am. What I did was unforgivable. Was it? Because 3 days ago, you seemed pretty proud of yourself. I was angry. I was confused. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking very clearly, Clara. You planned this for months. You and Sophie and Matthias worked out every detail. Sophie lied to me. She said you'd be fine, that you'd figure out a way to get help. After major surgery, in a blizzard, with no phone, Clara started crying, the same manipulative tears she'd used throughout our marriage whenever she wanted something. I know it was wrong. I'm so sorry, David. I'm so sorry. Are you sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught? Both. I'm sorry I did it. I never should have hurt you like that. I leaned forward in my chair. Clara, do you remember what you said to me before you left? David, please. You said some people are born winners, and others are me. Do you remember that? I was angry. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. You meant every word. You've always thought you were better than me, smarter than me, more deserving than me. That's why you felt justified in stealing my money and destroying my life. Clara wiped her eyes with a tissue. That's not true, isn't it? Let me ask you something, Clara. During our entire marriage, did you ever, even once, consider me your equal? She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know how to answer that. That's an answer in itself. I stood up and walked to the fireplace, the same fireplace where she'd thrown my phone. Clara, I want you to understand something. This isn't about the money. It's not even about Matthias, really. It's about respect. I know. I disrespected you, and I'm sorry. You didn't just disrespect me. You tried to destroy me. You wanted me to suffer, to feel helpless and humiliated. You wanted me to know that I'd lost everything, and there was nothing I could do about it. David, but here's what you never understood about me, Clara. I'm not the weak, pathetic man you thought I was. I'm not the pushover who would just accept being betrayed and abandoned. I turned to face her, and I could see the fear in her eyes. She was starting to realize that this wasn't going to be the simple apology session she'd expected. What do you want from me? She whispered. I want you to tell the truth. All of it. I want you to admit that you never loved me, that you married me because I was safe and stable, and you thought you could control me. I want you to admit that you've been planning to leave me for years, and Matthias was just your excuse to finally do it. That's not. I want you to admit that you enjoyed hurting me, that when you threw my phone in that fire and walked out that door, you felt powerful and superior and free. Clara was sobbing now, but I wasn't finished. And I want you to admit that you're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry your plan failed. You're sorry that instead of being on a beach in the Maldives with your criminal boyfriend, you're sitting in a cabin in Wisconsin, begging for forgiveness from the man you tried to destroy. Stop it, she whispered. Please stop. Why? Because the truth hurts? Because you don't like seeing yourself for what you really are? I walked back to my chair and sat down. Clara, I'm going to give you a choice. You can tell me the truth, all of it, on camera, and I'll consider forgiving you. Or you can keep lying to me, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. On camera. Oh yes, this entire conversation is being recorded, just like our last conversation in this room. Clara looked around frantically, spotting the small cameras I'd placed around the cabin. You can't use that. It's illegal. Actually, it's not. This is my property, and you consented to being recorded when you agreed to come here for this apology. I never consented. Your lawyer did. It's in the plea agreement. All conversations related to your restitution and apology can be recorded for legal purposes. Clara realized she was trapped. She could either tell the truth and humiliate herself on camera, or she could lie and face the consequences of violating her plea agreement. What happens to the recording? That depends on how honest you are. Clara took a deep breath and looked directly into the camera. My name is Clara Davidson, and I want to confess to something. For the next hour, Clara told the truth about our marriage, about her affair, about the theft, about her complete lack of remorse for what she'd done to me. She admitted that she'd never loved me, that she'd married me for financial security, that she'd been planning to leave me for years. She admitted that she'd enjoyed hurting me, that she'd felt powerful when she threw my phone in the fire, that she'd laughed with Sophie about how pathetic I was. She admitted everything. When she was finished, she looked at me with hollow eyes. There, are you happy now? I'm satisfied, I said. Clara, you're going to leave here, and you're going to serve your sentence, and you're going to pay back every penny you stole, and then you're going to disappear from my life forever. What about the recording? I'm going to keep it, as insurance. If you ever try to contact me, or harass me, or cause problems for me in any way, I'll release it to the public. Everyone will know exactly what kind of person you are. Clara stood up slowly, her legs shaky. I suppose I deserve this. You deserve worse. But I'm not like you, Clara. I don't enjoy causing unnecessary pain. She walked to the door, then turned back one last time. David, for what it's worth, I really am sorry. No, you're not. But someday, maybe you will be. Clara left the cabin, and I listened to her car drive away. Jules emerged from the woods a few minutes later, grinning from ear to ear. Did you get everything? Every beautiful second. David, that was the most thorough confession I've ever heard. Good. Make sure it's stored securely. I have a feeling I might need it someday. I walked to the window and looked out at the snow-covered landscape. This place had been the scene of the worst betrayal of my life, but it had also been where I'd found my strength again. Clara had tried to destroy me, but she'd only made me stronger. She'd thought she was leaving me with nothing, but she'd actually given me everything I needed to rebuild my life. As I packed up the cameras and prepared to leave the cabin for the last time, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: genuine happiness. Not the fake contentment I'd settled for during my marriage, but real joy. Clara and Matthias and Sophie had all learned the same lesson: underestimate someone at your own peril. They'd thought I was weak, but they'd been wrong. They'd thought they were the winners, but in